Another season of fantasy football and another Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy Football League draft in the books. I went down Sunday night around 8:30. I got some of the most avid viewers and listeners of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast together 3 years ago, and I said, hey, look, you guys think you can beat me in fantasy football. I think I can beat you in fantasy football. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got. I want to see what you're made of. Show me what you're made of. And we'll see how it turns out. I won the first year. Shane Courtney won the second year. Michael Burdett, shout out to him. He won the 14-team version of the league. So what I did was I took the best of both leagues, put them together, and said, feast or famine. Let's do a 10-team league, and let's make this happen. Let's make a really good league. Let's make something fun, and it has been fun, to say the least. I want to dive into this 2020 Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy Football League draft. If you guys have any comments at all, feel free to comment below. Keep them appropriate. Keep them cool, and I will read them on the show. It'll have your picture, your comment, and I will read it. That's the beauty of streaming this podcast and making this happen. So let's get right to it. The TTSP, abbreviation for the Thomas Take Sports Podcast 2020 Fantasy Football League Draft Recap. In particular, I have to go over the first round first, right? It's the first round. That's where the talent goes. That's where the big names are being picked. That's where we get to see some of the shocks and surprises of any draft. I want to start off with the first overall pick held by Papa Thomas, my dad, Dean Thomas. He takes Christian McCaffrey with the first overall selection, running back, Carolina Panthers. Not much of a shock there. And in the diabolical, evil words from my dad to me, he said, hey, you got Christian McCaffrey in one league, I'll take him in another. If it doesn't work out, it won't work out for both of us. It won't work out for you. At the very worst, it won't work out for me either. So that's how my dad thinks. He's like, hey, if I take him, it won't work out for me, but it won't work out for you in another league. That was his justification. I honestly, truly believe that the first rabbit out of the proverbial fantasy football draft hat would have been pulled by my dad, but instead it was pulled by me. We'll get to that in a little bit. But second overall, great guy that is Samuel White. Second overall, he took Saquon Barkley. Not much of a shock to me. When you start to play with buddies and play with people that you know, you learn what type of players they actually like. And I was not shocked in the slightest when Samuel took Saquon. I actually sent Samuel his pick and said, hey, you're picking second. And I literally sent Saquon, second Saquon. Obviously, I knew that was the direction he was going to go in. I wasn't even telling him who to pick. I just knew that that's who Samuel would take. So the picks 4, 5, and 6 in the draft. Former wrestling teammate of Lockport High School, far better wrestler than I, wrestled far longer than I, Nadif Taylor. He'll be on the show as we preview week 1 of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy Football League. He took Ezekiel Elliott. Did I do something? Yes, I did. I skipped over my pick. Dang it, I skipped over my pick. The biggest surprise of the first round for everybody was the curveball that I threw, taking Pat Mahomes third overall. I will justify it. This is a 2-quarterback league. This is a league where I suffered mightily by not taking a solid quarterback last year. I think that was the main reason why I did not come away with a title last season in this league. So I thought, let's right a wrong. Let's take it from the top. Let's take the top quarterback from the top and see what happens. Let's see what team ends up being forced into taking the next quarterback. So I took Pat Mahomes knowing that a domino effect would take place. My diabolical plan was, 1, I would get the best quarterback in the draft, and 2, it would start a little bit of a progression towards teams taking quarterbacks that I didn't even want. So Pat Mahomes was my third overall selection. And folks, I typically do not take a quarterback for quite some time in any in any draft. I don't take a quarterback for quite some time. I did in this draft, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it in the slightest. I think that was what I had to do, to field an effective, awesome team. Fourth overall, Nadif, former wrestler, former teammate of mine at Lockport High School Wrestling. He had the workhorse fall into his lap, Ezekiel Elliott, fourth overall. Ideally, in any other scenario, Zeke would have went in the top 3 picks, but in a 2-quarterback league, my justification was I need a damn good quarterback, and who's better than Pat Mahomes in the league right now? Nobody. So Ezekiel Elliott goes fourth to Nadif. He built a really strong run game in this draft. I'm going to talk to him about that Sunday morning prior to NFL action. I'm going to talk to him about that on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy Football Show. Fifth overall, Johnny Rindak, longtime buddy of mine. He takes Lamar Jackson. So I started the domino effect within this draft and within this league of Johnny Rindak taking Lamar Jackson fifth. He told me he was shocked I took Mahomes third. He thought with the 5th overall pick, I'm assuming he thought with the 5th overall pick that, Mahomes would be available. Well, you forgot that your boy RT is picking 3rd overall, known to throw a curveball, pull a rabbit out of my hat a time or two in fantasy football league drafts. So 6th overall, Chris Cornell, he selects Alvin Kamara, who is due to get a massive extension from the New Orleans Saints fairly soon. Kamara, his touchdown total took a deep, deep dive down from 2 years ago to this past season. I talked about that on the Fantasy Football Running Backs show, the top 10 fantasy football running backs. You guys need to dive into that. That was a show that could win you your fantasy league, safe to say. I'm not just saying it because it's me, but take it from somebody that has won multiple leagues, and take it from somebody that has pretty much taken every which scenario in the 2020 mock drafts and played those out. 7th overall, Bryce Vandermaas of Slowest Buffalo in the Herd. They work together, they meaning Bryce and Cody White, Slowest Buffalo in the Herd. Check them out. He selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was the first rookie that was picked in this fantasy football league draft. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is getting a lot of love right now. His average draft position is skyrocketing, and I truly anticipate that will only continue in the years to come. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a big part in 2020 of what is the most potent offense in football. Edwards-Helaire, the main running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Don't let anyone fool you when they tell you anything different. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, rightfully so, deserves to be the first rookie selected in every fantasy football draft in 2020. 8th overall, Josh Sonberg, the family man. Josh Sonberg took Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook. Looking at Dalvin Cook's numbers, I thought he had a phenomenal season last year in Kevin Stefanski's offense. My biggest question mark with Dalvin Cook is that Kevin Stefanski is no longer there. He is now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So how different of an offense will this be in Minnesota, and how much will it impact Dalvin Cook? We will see. We will find out. If at all. Hey, it might not impact Dalvin Cook at all. I could look like the biggest moron on planet Earth. I think either way, Dalvin Cook is a good running back. You need as many quality running backs to win your fantasy football league. I think running back will stand the test of time as far as being the most important position in fantasy football. And it's a position that you need to not only acquire elite talent, you need to have elite depth at that position. And I thought Josh did a decent job at that. Shane Courtney, the technical reigning champ of the 10-team version of the TTSP Fantasy Football League, he took the best receiver in the league and the best receiver in fantasy football in Michael Thomas. Can't go wrong there. Can't go wrong there in any way, shape, or form. I truly believe that Michael Thomas might end up being best receiver of this generation. I know that's a wide claim to make because there are so many really good receivers in the National Football League right now. DeAndre Hopkins is one of them. Devontae Adams, I think, is far too underrated. But to me, Michael Thomas is number one. He's playing with Drew Brees. He's playing in that potent Saints offense. Over 180 targets last year. That is just a unbelievable amount of targets for a receiver, and to catch 140 of those, I mean, if you're in a points per reception league, that alone can do wonders for you in your league. Phil Money, number 10th overall. He got the 2-pick swing around. He selected Derrick Henry, and I thought that, honest, Derrick Henry could have went 7 to Bryce. Bryce could have picked Derrick Henry. Josh Sonberg, he picked Dalvin Cook. He could have went with Derrick Henry. Big question with Derrick Henry is, how legit is he? He's really only had that one dominant season in his career, and it was this past season. He was the rushing champion last year. So what will we see of Derrick Henry in 2020? I think that's a big question. But at 10th overall, I mean, that's a really good pick there for Phil, and that's a pick that I think was warranted of being selected in the first round. Derrick Henry definitely deserves that consideration given the 2020 season that he had. We move on to the second round of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy Football League draft. I only brought the graphics for the first round, and I truly think that we have a great league this year in terms of just talent, as far as teams in this league, managers in this league, picking guys for the right reasons. Tyreek Hill was selected in the second round by Phil on that snake draft rotation. Phil took Derrick Henry and Tyreek Hill. Then we have Dr. Poyer and Mr. Hyde, Shane Courtney taking Joe Mixon with Michael Thomas. We have Josh Sonberg taking Nick Chubb with Dalvin Cook to start off his draft with 2 really good running backs, as well as Bryce Vandermaas taking the number 1 tight end in fantasy football, according to Bryce, not Travis Kelce. According to Bryce, George Kittle. That then allowed me to take Travis Kelce. More on that a little bit later. 5th overall selection in the second round. Julio Jones goes to Chris Cornell. Johnny Rindak takes Josh Jacobs to pair with Lamar Jackson. And Nadif Taylor takes Devontae Adams to pair with Ezekiel Elliott. Yours truly takes the number 1 tight end, in my opinion, in fantasy football, and Travis Kelce with the 8th pick in the second round. I was truly astonished that Travis Kelce lasted as long as he did. I mean, and in order for Travis Kelce to last that long, he had to be passed over by some really good players. I'm not saying that those players aren't good enough to be selected ahead of Kelce, but to let the guy take Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce in the same league, you guys messed up. You guys messed up big time. I'm definitely looking forward to diving into this draft a little bit more. I will be posting this draft on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page for everybody to weigh in on, and all the fantasy football groups that I'm a part of on Facebook will be able to dive into it a little bit deeper by commenting on it and giving me their reaction, their take to this draft. It was a fun one. It went fairly quickly, and it was a draft indeed that I most definitely enjoyed. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast 2020 Fantasy Football League Draft Recap, 3rd season of the TTSP Fantasy Football League, and I'm looking forward to it. I got a feeling that it's going to be a good one. So take care, everybody. Stay safe. And last, and certainly not least, subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, like the Facebook page, do all that, and get instant access to the show. And I'll see you soon. Take care.